not entered any numbers. Please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
Good morning and welcome
Followed by pound.
to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting for June. Thank you for coming. I am Jen Saponis from the Capital District Transportation Committee, or I should say, formerly known as the Capital District Transportation Committee. We actually recently changed our name to the Capital Region Transportation Council, but we're kind of doing a slow rollout of that. So you may start to see us referred to as the Capital Region Transportation Council or the Transportation Council. We did change our name in an effort to kind of set ourselves apart from CDTA and some of the other organizations that we sometimes get confused with. Okay, so we'll go around the table here at in the office to introduce ourselves, and then I will go through the participants on Zoom and ask you to introduce yourself. So again, I'm Jen Saponis.
Rebecca Odell, Linda Vonderheide, Rensselaer County.
Ivan Vamos, NYBC.
Okay, and then I'll call an APC on the Zoom, and if you can introduce yourself and what organization you're representing, that would be great. Dave.
Dave Woodard.
Dave, I think you have to mute one of your computer if you're going to use your phone.
Okay.
Okay. Charles.
Charles Welty with the Albany County Department of Health.
Ed.
Ed Brennan, Albany Bicycle Coalition.
And the other Ed.
Ed Davidson, JMT.
James.
I'm James Round from Capitol Streets.
Ethan.
Ethan Warren, CDTA.
Valerie.
Valerie Dean, DOT Region 1.
Jeanette. Jeanette, you have to unmute.
Jeanette Cato Marino, advocate for pedestrian and bicyclists in the Capital Region.
Jesse.
Hi, Jesse Vogel from Creighton Manning.
Lindsay.
Lindsay Brott, CDTA and CDPHP cycle.
Peter.
Peter Knutson from the Department of Engineering, Schenectady County.
Tom. To unmute Tom.
Tom Benware, NYBC.
Paul.
Hi, Paul Winkela from Urban Cycling Solutions.
And Chaim.
Hi, I'm Simon from CDTC.
Okay, did I miss anybody? Okay. If we have folks join us, we will add them to the attendance list. So we have a pretty full agenda today, but our presenter asked if we could bump them to a little bit later in the meeting. So we're gonna actually skip our feature presentation and go to the discussion items and then return back to the presentation. So our first discussion item is the CDPHP cycle season updates. So Lindsay, if you're, I know you probably weren't ready to talk about it just yet, but if you are ready, can you give us an update on CDPHP cycle season?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you, Jen, as always, for including us. And letting us kind of get the word out about the program. Obviously, we're a little bit late this season, but that is because we have essentially rebuilt the entire CDPHP cycle network. We've got a brand new operations vendor, as well as a new software and bicycle provider. So this season, we're working with Drop Mobility as well as Shared Mobility. The good thing about all of that is that's how we are able to bring e-bikes into the CDPHP cycle fleet this year. We're unable to procure e-bikes and get them here to the capital region. So we made the move, switched vendors, rebuilt the entire system, and we have in our possession right now, came off a truck yesterday morning, 230 e-bikes. And the picture that Jen's got on the screen here, that's what the e-bikes look like this year. So we flipped the color scheme for the e-bikes. So they're purple with green baskets as opposed to green bikes with purple baskets. They came off the truck, they look great. Steve Kratzbis, who's been our operations manager since the program launched, he's still leading our team. So we were able to keep him on board with the new conversion, which we, and especially I, am very, very happy about. So Steve and I have been diligently working all off season to rebuild this system. So we've got a brand new website. It's cdphpcycle.org. If you do happen to go to .com, it will redirect you to .org, but it's a brand new website. We just launched that last week, as well as a new app. So everybody has to download the new app. You do have to create new memberships because it's an entirely new back end, new software, new website, new app, all that stuff. So, we're getting word out, kind of piece by piece on getting people signed up for new memberships. And we do anticipate having the bikes on the road very, very soon, now that we have the e-bikes in our possession. Our plan is to get the e-bikes on the road first. Let Steve and his team, kind of watch behaviors with the e-bikes, give people a chance to try them out, see what they think about them, track battery usage, battery life, all those kind of operational logistics. The pedal bikes will follow the e-bikes in a couple of weeks. They also, with this new system, have new technology being attached to them to connect them to this new network. So essentially a new brain, a new back end of the bike. Couple of things that you'll notice right away with both pedal bikes and the e-bikes that are different is the U-bar lock is going to be gone on the pedal bikes. Both bikes now will have a cable lock that goes through the tire, the back tire of the bike, around the racking infrastructure or the public object that you lock to, and then locks back to the bike. So we've also produced some instructional, educational videos that we'll be putting on the website and on our social media networks, to help people learn kind of the new ins and outs of the bikes. But overall, we're very excited. It's been a long haul. We knew we were going to be a little bit late. We were hoping that it wasn't going to get this late, but I certainly think that the new product that we've got on the road, the new partners that we have in place, it's a great team. And I think it's going to be worth the wait. And we are super excited about what we've got coming for everybody in a very short amount of time.
Great. So you said it's Drop Mobility?
Drop Mobility, yep. They're out of Toronto. They have several different locations throughout the United States where they have some of their staff and program managers that we've been working with. So they provide the bikes. So they were able to get us these new e-bikes, and they make the website, they make the app. So we work with them for all of the technology and the vehicles themselves. And then the operations of it, kind of the boots on the ground, Steve and his team, that's Shared Mobility out of Buffalo. So it's the same group that runs the bike share program out in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, Ready Bike, if anyone's familiar with that system. It's that team. So Steve is now working with them to do the operations here in the capital region on our network. And we're very excited about it.
Do the stations or hubs have to change in order to accommodate the new bikes?
Nope. Same infrastructures out on the street. The one difference that we're starting off with the e-bikes is we're encouraging people to bring the e-bikes back to cycle racks just for operational efficiency and battery swapping ability. But we will let you lock it off of a cycle rack to anything else. We'll just have what we're calling a $2 convenience fee, similar to how Cycle launched 7 years ago. If you parked it off of a cycle rack, there was a convenience fee. So we're just starting off the e-bikes that way, just to kind of help Steve and his team kind of get their arms around the operational behaviors and make sure we can keep batteries as fresh as possible for everybody.
Does anyone else have a question for Lindsay?
So there's no charging there. You guys are essentially going around and swapping batteries.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Everything gets charged in our bike shops. We still have our main workshop that's in the basement of the Washington Ave branch of the Albany Public Library. We've purchased heavy duty charging infrastructure. One for safety component of just making sure that we properly safely charge multiple batteries at the same time. So we've connected with a company, actually we got them through the fire department in New York City. It's called Cell Block. So we've got big giant charging racks that these batteries are living in when they're charging in our shops, as well as up in, we've now built a second shop up in Saratoga in the train station that CDTA operates. So we've got kind of a mini satellite shop up in Saratoga that will also help us with efficiency going from Saratoga and Warren County to make that connection. So yeah, so everything charges in the shop, and then the guys go around and swap batteries. We are working with a couple of different energy companies, hoping to get some pilot programs on the ground over the summer or over the fall to start testing some wireless on-street charging. But you know, we'll see how that comes together. But that will certainly help us and change the battery swapping world for sure.
There's a message a question in the chat from Jeanette. Are you restricting the e-bikes from non-motorized trails?
We unfortunately can't restrict anybody from doing anything. We certainly, you know, as we've done all along with this program, we preach and encourage people to ride safely, ride smartly, follow the rules of the road, wear helmets. We ordered another large batch of helmets this year to hand out at different community events and that kind of thing. And you know, we tell people where they should and maybe, you know, so we just, like I said, we can't force people to not ride somewhere, but we certainly encourage them where it's best to ride the different vehicles.
And Paul asked, what kind of data are you collecting, and will the data be broken down by e-bike versus pedal?
Yes, that's our plan is, you know, kind of once we get into the back end of the system and people start riding these bikes, you know, having that ability to track pedal usage versus electric usage, and you know, the different cities, and kind of see what kind of behaviors we're seeing with the new bikes out on the road, and who's riding which bikes where.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So the next agenda item is Bike to Work Day, which has been rescheduled. So I'm going to pass it to James to give us an update on what is planned for the new Bike to Work Day date.
Yeah, thanks. So Capitol Street is kind of, I don't want to say taking over Bike to Work Day, but we've been working with CDTC to put on Bike to Work Day this year, and getting feedback from years prior. We decided to do it a bit later this year in June. That was one of the things that we heard back from, or CDTC got back from past years participants, was that the May date that, you know, everybody across the nation is participating in is a little bit too early for our region. So we chose to have it in early June, and then the wildfire smoke made it unsafe to be outside. So we need to reschedule the event for June 29th. So we basically just bumped it back 3 weeks, so that it's still on Thursday morning. And essentially what we've kind of removed a little bit of the challenge components from the event and are just focusing on it being a fun and encouraging event for people who are looking to change their commute, people who might be curious about biking to work, but not necessarily targeting the dedicated bike commuters who are very comfortable with already. Those folks are certainly welcome, and we're excited for them to come on down and get some refreshments and chat with everybody on Thursday morning, the 29th. But we're also looking to really encourage people who are new to it. So yeah, the morning of the 29th, we'll have a press conference in downtown Albany. Mayor Sheehan will be there speaking. We are excited that CDTA is going to be a little bit more active in it, I think, too, right, Lindsay? Now that they're a little bit more ready.
Yes.
Got coffee for everybody. We'll have some snacks. And then in the evening, we'll have a group bike ride with Albany Social Cycling.
Great, thank you, James. And then moving on to the next agenda item is related to our regional trail planning. So Rebecca and Teresa in our office are working on building an online trail map. So, as many of you know, we used to publish a paper map of the Mohawk Hudson and the regional trail system. And the great problem that we came into was that the trail system expanded so quickly, we couldn't keep up with updating and printing those maps. It's a good problem to have. And also most people are looking for a digital option. So we are moving the map to online. You can find, OPRHP and Parks and Trails. They all have, some kind of online trail map, and we are working on building that. And Rebecca and Teresa are super busy. So it's like close to being done, but not quite. And as soon as it is, we are going to share it with everybody. And then, of course, we are resuming our trail count schedule. We, piloted our counters last year and the summer before and learned a lot about good and bad places to put them. So we are going to restart that, and all of the counters will have a laminated sticker with information about the Transportation Council on them, and a QR code linking to our trail planning webpage. And we'll have on that webpage a link to a trail user survey, the same one we did when we did the Regional Trails Perspective 10 years ago. So instead of just doing that kind of data collection every 10 years, we'll try and do it on an ongoing basis as we can. So the first week of counting, which should be next week, we had a little bit of a delay, will be again, trying on the Skyway, but a different location so that we're not picking up vehicle traffic from adjacent ramp. The South End Connector Trail in Albany near Church Street, and then the Helderberg Hudson Rail Trail on Grove Street in Voorheesville. And then the following count cycle, we will be doing a count on the Zim Smith Trail in Mechanicville, and then the two other Helderberg Hudson Rail Trail trailheads. And then we're going to move into Saratoga and Schenectady County with the Champlain Connector, Rexford Bridge, and then Schenectady Riverside Park. We tried to do a count on the Rexford Bridge last year too, and also had that similar problem with that adjacent vehicle traffic. So we're going to try a different location and see if we can get some good data, because that is an important piece of infrastructure in the system. So if anyone has any other locations, please reach out to me, or if you have any requests, we can definitely schedule it for later in the summer or fall.
Yeah, and do you know if you guys have recent counts on the Menands Bridge? The Troy Menands.
The new connector?
Just the just the existing bridge connection in South Troy that connects into Manans, the bike trail.
The 378 bridge?
Yeah,
We do not have counts on there.
I
But I
know
do,
DOT is looking at alternatives for that bridge now. So
yeah,
that would be a place that would be helpful as we're, I mean, they seem to be, conscious of the importance of that connection, but, I think that would be a great thing to have.
yeah. And we do have some news related to that project that we'll get to in a little bit that I think people will be happy to hear about. But that is a good idea. Okay. So moving on to, I know we kind of have a bunch of different planning initiatives listed separately on the agenda, but I wanted to update everyone on some of both CDTC and DOT's long-range planning initiatives, what's going on, how they're related, or how we're going to try to coordinate things as best as possible. On the state side, right, there are a few ongoing planning initiatives like the highway safety improvement, the strategic highway safety plan, and the carbon reduction strategy. They've released their electric vehicle infrastructure development plan, and DOT is preparing to launch the active transportation plan study or process. Then, of course, on the Transportation Council's end, we are currently updating the congestion management process. So you may have seen surveys out about congestion and traffic and asking people to provide some feedback on that. We are also in the middle of updating the coordinated public transit human services transportation plan, which is for seniors and people with disabilities. So we have a survey that's out now that closes at the end of this month. So we hope to have that updated plan later this summer. And then we have a bunch of other plans that have either recently wrapped up, like our bus lane feasibility study, Smart Communities Toolbox, existing plans like the Capital District Trails Plan, and then things that we're getting ready to do, like the Safe Streets and Roads for All project. So at the same time, we are beginning the process of updating our metropolitan transportation plan. We formally refer to this as New Vision. So if you've heard us talk about New Visions or the principles in New Visions, that is our metropolitan transportation plan. We are about to update that or start the process that we anticipate adopting a new plan September 2025. Our plan, the new plan will be rebranded, really start from the bottom up, but try to integrate all of these other planning initiatives and all of the feedback that we're receiving for them. And at the same time, New York State is starting the update to their long-range transportation plan. So of course, our metropolitan transportation plan has to be coordinated. The goals, the objectives, performance measures, and strategies need to, coordinate with each other. So I just wanted to give everyone kind of just like a snapshot of all of the different initiatives that have either recently been completed, are ongoing, or about to start. We have already talked about with New York State and CDTA trying to coordinate as much as possible, so that we're not asking people about their experience as a pedestrian 100 different times throughout the next 3 years. So we have some sort of coordination on that public outreach side. So if you go to a DOT planning meeting and you see us or CDTA there doing outreach, or go to one of our meetings and you see DOT there doing outreach, we're trying to all work together to really make sure that our plans, that we're not kind of exhausting everyone in the public. And we know that there's already meeting fatigue, survey fatigue, so we're going to do our best to really coordinate and make sure that we're not asking you the same questions over and over again for the next few years. So we'll keep everyone updated as things move along, so everyone understands what's going on, knows what different plans are called, who is doing what surveys are out there, and where we need help kind of getting information out to the public or promoting surveys or outreach events. So.
Will you have a connection to the 787 study that is ongoing and scheduled to somehow link into whatever is developed?
Right, so then in addition to these region-wide and statewide plans, we have some large-scale planning initiatives like 787. Schenectady County will be starting the 890 Planning Environmental Linkage Study. There's the ongoing 378 Bridge Planning Environmental Linkage Study. And, you know, while these are located in specific municipalities, they have regional impacts. So those planning activities will also be, we're trying to coordinate them, especially 787 project, which will be going on at the same time as these other plans. So there is, and we hope to have more information about it, a Reimagine 787 public meeting, June 27th at the MVP Arena in downtown Albany. So at that meeting, you will probably see the Transportation Council and CDTA there with either a table or, you know, doing outreach for, you know, our ongoing initiatives. So those bigger planning initiatives will also, we're also definitely aware of how, you know, they will relate to the state and regional long range plans. Okay, so I unfortunately don't have an update quite yet on this, but as we mentioned a couple meetings ago, I did do these slides, not thinking that I need to change our name yet, but the Transportation Council is developing a complete streets policy that would be implemented and apply here in the work that we do at the Transportation Council. So as that moves forward, I will be sharing that with everyone. This is our ongoing standing update, the bipartisan infrastructure law. We are still maintaining that page on our website. There are some grants that are currently open, or we're expecting them to open very soon. The Safe Streets and Roads for All grant is open through July. As many of you know, the Transportation Council has received a $1 million grant to develop a Vision Zero plan for the region in cooperation with a handful of our municipalities. The Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Effective, and Cost-Saving Transportation, or PROTECT. That grant program is expected to open it was winter, spring, late spring 2023, but this we found out will only relate to state projects. The Reconnecting Communities Program grant is expected to open this summer. New York State is required to develop a carbon reduction plan, which we hope to see a draft of late spring, early summer. This is due in September to federal highways. And then the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation, or SMART grants program, is expected to open in August. So again, if you are interested in these grants, your municipality is interested in these grants, definitely let us know. We are happy to assist, provide some guidance on them, and we are updating the bill webpage on our website so that the most up-to-date information is on there. A reminder that our joint technical assistance program with CDRPC is open, and we will be accepting proposals through the end of September. So eligible applicants, which include municipalities. If you are interested in applying, you should email techassist@cvrpc.org, and we will set up a meeting with you to discuss your scope and whether it's feasible to do under this program. That is just a reminder. And then this was attached to the agenda. I know it's difficult to read on the screen. And this will be in the notes, but this is just updates of all the different planning initiatives that are supported by the Transportation Council. A lot of the new planning studies, community planning studies that were added in this UPWP, the staff is working on finishing up the request for expressions of interest. So we hope to be able to start a lot of those studies in the fall. And then one more update before I will turn this back over to Paul and Dan. So DOT has reached out and they would like to have a stakeholder input meeting related to the 378 Troy Manans Bridge Pell study, just with the Active Transportation Advisory Committee to really get your input on the proposed alternatives and prioritizing improvements going forward. There has been a lot of discussion about, the type of path or bike ped facility that will be included on the new bridge and the routing of the new bridge. So DOT asked if the Transportation Council would host a special meeting. The consultant and DOT will be presenting, and it's just for our Active Transportation Advisory Committee. So we'll have it here at the office, but we'll also have a Zoom link for anyone who would like to or needs to participate virtually. So I'll send out a save the date, but mark your calendar for Tuesday, August 1st at 9 a.m. Okay.
Hey, Jen, I just have I don't know if you can answer this question, but on that, during that public engagement meeting, do you have any sense of how far along they'll be in the design process?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. I know that there are several alternatives that are being proposed now, but I'm not sure what the plans for design or the schedule for that are.
I think we're at the preliminary part of design. They're just trying to figure out where they want to run it first.
Right, so now it's just
Yeah.
determining the route for the connection, and then design, but I don't know what the full schedule is for this project.
Thanks.
One peripheral issue is to get a bike trail down to closer to the waterfront at that point. Perhaps using the existing road that's there, but eventually we want to connect up that to the trail going down to south to Rensselaer.
I actually have a trail plan. There's a roadway along there or whatever. It would go from like the jail and it would go snake along parallel to the roadway or whatever. So I sort of made up little plans on that one, but to connect onto that would be interesting because we've got at least 10, 20 feet to go up. So
No, it's a design problem.
Yeah.
And,
stay on the road and go around on Burden.
Okay. So now I am going to pass it to Paul Winkeller and Dan Sirachi from Urban Cycling Solutions. I've made you both co-presenters, so you should be able to share your screens. You may all remember Paul and Dan had talked about the cycling census that they received NYSERDA funding and support for. They did talk about it to this group, and we've been sharing the link to that cycling census. So it is completed and they have the results. So I asked them to present them to our group and to kind of talk about or provide some suggestions to how people can use the data, especially in local planning. So Dan and Paul, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Good morning, everybody. I think many of you know when I was at NYBC, and thanks to Ivan Famos, I was a bit obsessed with numbers and data. And we didn't know, we still don't know the value of things like taking care of people when they're injured after a crash or the cost of their lost time to the economy. We don't really know the value of bike-based tourism. I mean, PTNY is an old study, but that's quite outdated. And we also didn't really know much about what motivates people to cycle and what prevents them from being on their bikes more. So thanks to NYSERDA, and thanks to many of the people in this room who helped disseminate links to the survey, we now have an initial snapshot from quite a robust data set, which I was primarily responsible for the outreach on. The data was collected over the course of 3 to 4 months. It really is there's no state has ever done anything like this. I think this is the second largest census ever done in America. The results are quite fascinating and quite public facing with the report and with the data dashboard that Dan put together. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dan to make the main presentation, and hopefully there'll be some time for questions.
Now, for those of you who don't know Paul well, he's too humble to admit this, but he is almost single-handedly responsible for making the New York cycling census as broad and successful as it was. So that's just because he knows everybody. If you ever need a Rolodex, you're looking at him. In any case, so yes, the New York cycling census, we've been working on it for the past year. For those of you who are not familiar with Urban Cycling Solutions, what we do, we're a small consultancy focused on active transportation and complete streets all over New York State. We've written national guidance on bike transit integration. We worked on the MTA's plan down in the city. And the census was a really big initiative for us. So today I'm going to go over the general demographics of the census. I'm going to talk about the comments we received. I'm going to go over what I would consider some of the highest level key findings, and then how you can use the census moving forward with all of your work. So the census, we know that this was the largest statewide survey of cyclists ever conducted in the United States, with more than 13,000, it's actually 700 responses. And we have responses from every single county in the state. I'm very excited to share that the census, that our New York cycling census, has also inspired similar initiatives in New Jersey, and I think it's Minnesota, right, Paul? Michigan. So New York is leading the charge here. We published the results at the beginning of Bike Month in May, and there are two components to that. There's a final report and an online data dashboard, which I will go into more detail on later in the presentation. So as far as demographics, we had a great sampling. This was all organic response, so we didn't pay a dime to have people respond to the survey. That said, I think we did a fair job on some demographics. I think we've got a good age distribution. I think we have an okay sort of self-assigned cycling skill level here. We have a not so unexpected gender distribution. We did our best to reach out to different populations, but we still have a predominantly white sample here. And the income distribution is okay, but again, we do skew towards higher income individuals. The key takeaway from our demographics here is that the majority of respondents considered themselves enthusiastic and confident riders that ride about 2 to 3 times per week. And I should note that despite some of these demographics being small, we do have data filters that you can apply in your county on the data dashboard that can help you sort of dig into these demographics and get a better snapshot of what different populations are feeling about cycling. So we also, as we say in the report, New Yorkers have a lot to say. So for the 13,700 survey responses that we got, we also got more than 13,000 questions. So virtually everybody that took the survey had something else to say beyond the questions we asked. And we're still sorting through those. There's a lot of data there to sort through and not a very easy way to do it. But I can tell you from what we've analyzed that there are a lot of calls for more bike lanes and secure bike parking, particularly at transit. So not just a fixed rack in the ground, but a secure access storage cage or bike garage or valet service or something of that nature. We also saw a lot of comments about education for drivers, public agency staff, engineers, and particularly police about understanding the laws, how bikes are supposed to operate on the roadway. And I thought that was a really interesting volume of comments. And the last piece we have, a lot of people talked about how e-bikes can help them ride more. We do have a statistic on that, which I'll show you later, but you know, anecdotally, people are just clamoring for e-bikes. They know e-bikes can help them and they're eager to try them. So I'm going to go into the key findings now, the first of which is why New Yorkers are biking and then why they're not biking. So we found that the top motivators for cycling were exercise and fitness, fun, and mental health and wellness. And the reason I stopped there is because you'll see that there's a pretty big gap between mental health and wellness and the next highest motivator, which is the environmental impact component. So these are definitely the big three. And I think this is a real game changer from a bicycle sort of planning standpoint, because it opens the door to think about other funding sources, which is something we talk about in the report. So if 80% of people are looking for exercise and fitness, or 80% or more, and then mental health and wellness, there are so many different public health funding streams that we never tend to think about when we're doing infrastructure projects. So I think that this is a really important finding. It also speaks to our sort of societal awareness of mental health and the impact that bicycling can have on that. And any bike commuter who's ever, you know, biked every day and then had a day off for one reason or another, I can attest, you feel it. It's different. As far as barriers and why people aren't biking, not unsurprisingly, our top three here are lack of bike lanes and safe routes, weather, which we can't do much about, and fear of conflict with automobiles. The one note I will say, since weather generally is the second or third highest, biggest barrier, depending on your county, this sort of underscores the need for us to think about connections with transit. So if the forecast is iffy, and you decide to bike and then it rains in the afternoon, you have sort of a safety net where it's not going to deter you from taking that morning ride. I will note that these findings are consistent in the capital region. So what you're looking at right now are statewide statistics, but I just ran the numbers for the capital region, and these do bear out the same for the most part. As far as what people are actually using their bikes for, recreation and exercise are the two biggest trip purposes that we saw. And, you know, bike commuting, shopping, tourism, there's sort of a fall off there. We did find that bike commuting skewed towards younger riders. You know, we could speculate about why that is. I don't think it's all that surprising. On to our next key finding here. So interest in bike tourism. So you saw here that tourism has only 36% of respondents indicated that they use their bike for tourism currently. However, 88% of respondents express some level of interest in bike tourism, whether it's, yes, I definitely want to do this, I just haven't gotten around to it, or, hey, if there were more information out there, I think I would give it a try. So this is another important finding, again, as we're thinking about other ways to fund bicycling infrastructure in our communities. There's an economic development argument to be had here, and there are funding streams for economic development initiatives that we could apply towards bicycle infrastructure. E-bike propensity. So these are the numbers I was talking about. More than half of respondents indicated that e-bikes would definitely or likely increase their ride frequency. What was really interesting about this statistic is that younger age groups, so those 18 to 44, indicated that they would be more likely to bike with an e-bike than older age groups, which is sort of inverse of what you would think, because older age groups have a lot, or stand to benefit a lot from e-bikes, given their ability to overcome mobility issues and geography issues. So I thought that was interesting. There also might be an awareness gap about what e-bikes are and the legality of them, since up until 2020, they were not exactly legal in New York State. So e-bikes, people want e-bikes, and there's a lot of potential for e-bikes. Post-COVID ride frequency, we've heard a lot about this anecdotally, and there are some numbers at a high level, but census respondents overwhelmingly indicated that they bike the same amount or more than they did before COVID. So this is real, these are real numbers, and we know what's happening. Infrastructure ratings. So another feature of the census is that we asked people to rate infrastructure in their community. So we asked about bike lanes, trails, bike parking, bike share, wayfinding, and education programs. And what we found was, number one, New Yorkers don't tend to rate their bike infrastructure very highly, which is okay. But trails are very popular. People feel good about trails. Depending on your region, bike lanes are rated fairly high, and bike share is rated very high in certain regions, including New York City and the capital region. So you can go through and you can do your own analysis here. In the report, we have grouped infrastructure ratings by economic development region, but in the dashboard, you can go in, in the dashboard and the report, you can see the statewide numbers here, and you can do your own search through the different counties. The last key finding I will mention here is the carbon mitigation impacts. So it's no surprise to anybody on this call, but biking reduces emissions by getting us out of our cars, and we have a carbon-free trip. So we know that anecdotally. But what's really, really exciting about the census is that we were able to calculate the exact savings resulting from riding respondents. So respondents reported how much they ride and how frequently. So we were able to determine that census respondents saved in the last year approximately 1,400 metric tons of CO2, which is the equivalent to more than 160,000 gallons of gas and more than 3.5 million miles driven in a car. We have a number of other equivalencies, but to me, when I see this is, it's not just like, oh, you hippy dippy bicyclists, trying, want to use gas and all this. Well, yes, it's true. I mean, when you think about the share of transportation emissions compared to other emitters in New York State, here are real numbers that show us what biking is doing today and what the potential is if more people are biking from a carbon mitigation standpoint. So I think this is really huge. So implications of these findings, there's a lot more in the report that we don't have time to go through today. I encourage everybody here to peruse the document and see what we came up with. But I think the most important thing about the cycling census is that it opens the door to a more robust, holistic narrative about bicycling in our communities. So again, this is a pretty informed crowd. When we do bicycle projects and we're doing the planning and engineering, we use a lot of grim statistics. You know, oh, this corridor has this many people killed or seriously injured, or anecdotal, you know, experiences of a particular intersection. We also have very sporadic bike rider volume on corridors because it's not something that we typically count as a standard operating procedure on most roadways. So it's always tricky to figure out, okay, well, what data do we have that makes sense for us to plan better infrastructure here? But the census really kicks that door open to say, yes, we need to be thinking about our traffic safety data that we have available. However, we also can talk about economic development in our community. We can talk about public health implications of cycling. We have real numbers on ride frequency and carbon mitigation that we can apply so that when you're filling out a grant application, when you're developing a plan, you can say, yes, we're trying to reduce traffic crashes and deaths, but we're also trying to create a more vibrant community. And we know that there's a demand for this in our community, and we know that these things work. So if you're planning to use the census in your work, in your advocacy, in your planning, there are two tools. One is the overview report, which has all of the key findings I talked about and more. And then really exciting, there is the data dashboard online, which allows you to go in and you can look at why New Yorkers are biking, infrastructure ratings. We have a limited number of comments that you can sort through. It's just there's so many, it's going to take a long time to upload them. You can look at mode choice and frequency and a number of other insights, all sortable by county, gender, income, skill level. So you can really get in and do your own analysis depending on what work you're trying to do. These are both freely available resources on our website. That's urbancyclingsolutions.com/cycling census. And I encourage you all to check it out. This is you can see what the dashboard looks like here, just the different pages. I will note that because of the volume of data, the dashboard is a little clunky. So particularly on the why New Yorkers bike and why they don't page, without getting into the nitty-gritty of data management, if you're applying filters, it can take up to a minute for the filter to apply. But the data is there, be patient, and it will appear. So with that, Paul and I are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Paul. Could one of you drop the link to the dashboard in the chat?
I'm working on it.
Thanks.
Yep.
So would the Transportation Council, would we be able to get like the comments that were submitted just for the capital region if we?
Are you sure? Are you sure you want that? Yes. So what you can do, shoot me an email after this, and I got to clean it up a little bit, but yes, I can send you the raw data. I'm not going to sort it though. Well, maybe I will sort it because it'll be easier to send. So for everybody on the call, we actually had this question from DOT on another presentation we did last week about getting the raw data. It's a huge file. So we want to make the raw data publicly available to anyone and everyone. But mechanically, it's just a little bit of a challenge right now. So we're figuring it out. In the meantime, if you email me, I will find a way to get the data to you.
In the chat, Ethan asked, said the COVID slide looked like there's more biking now since before COVID. Do we know what mode they shifted from?
I mean, we can infer that they were driving before, but that's not exactly accurate. So the answer to your question is that the census does not explicitly tell us that. We do ask about mode choice, which included driving, biking, walking, transit. So you could probably make some assumptions looking at that question and looking at the COVID question. But there were a lot of people during COVID who, let's use New York City as an example, where 73+% of people use the subway and the bus every day as their primary mode of transportation. A lot of people switched to bikes instead of transit. So it's not, we don't have a good answer from the census data as to what mode they shifted from.
I have a comment on that. In the process of disseminating the survey to about, I think it was over 150 public and private groups and organizations and agencies. I think it was because of more cycling during the fact that people were cycling a lot more during the pandemic drove interest in this survey. I'm not sure we would have got such an incredible quick response if people weren't thinking more about cycling and cycling more in their own daily life during COVID.
And part of that, I should note, if we look at the reasons that people were biking, right? And we looked at, so we look at mental health and wellness, exercise, fitness, we see recreation and exercise. I mean, people were stir crazy during the pandemic. So it's not just a function of, people, instead of commuting by a transit or the car, they switched to bicycling. I mean, I think a lot of that can be attributed to finding safe ways to get out. So that could be one answer. We just, again, that's an inference based on a lot of anecdotal, what we heard during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was really kind of shocked by the mental health and wellness. And I was responsible for sticking in that question, actually, because I'm married to someone in that field. But I really, as Dan pointed out, I think that has tremendous implications for, again, as Dan pointed out, possible funding through public health, HMOs. Presenting this data in the right way might really yield some interesting new partnerships.
When we did some spot counts on the trail system during the pandemic, we had people go out in person and count. We saw, on some trails, like a 300% increase in trail usage. So, I think we were all observing more bicyclists out there. And then when we did the counts, at least on the trail system, we didn't do it, on the roadways, but the data showed there was a pretty significant increase in people getting out and bicycling in the trails.
And that's consistent with national data. People for Bikes did sort of an aggregated study of eco-counter data on major trail corridors all over the country. And they found the same thing, like approximately 300 to 350% increases in ridership. Other questions?
There is always a question of what is missing, and the people that answered your census, and it's impressive the numbers that you got. The people that are missing are the people that tend not to ever respond to anything, including the U.S. Census, including new immigrants, all sorts of other people that tend to use their bicycle more for utilitarian purposes. It's a challenge getting that population and trying to figure out how to serve them, or at least keep them safe.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I tried like the Dickens to get this census into two different advocacy networks in New York City for the delivery community, and I wasn't able to do that. So there's 60,000 low income, mostly immigrant riders. They're not really represented. That would have really skewed the data actually, but I tried hard to get them. And as we know from the great work of community bike shops around the state, community bike shops disseminated this census, but God knows whether the people they work with responded. And those are also folks that ride bikes, but don't talk about it as much as.
And I should note that we are upfront in the demographics of the survey about the imperfection of the sample. And at the end of the report, one of the takeaways we have is how we would restructure future iterations of the census. And I do think, yes, the scale of the response is a really exciting raw indicator of the interest in cycling across the state. But, in the future, I think we actually need to put some funding behind direct outreach and engagement to specific demographics and populations so that we are more representative. So we're very clear about that. And I would add one last bit is, again, even though we don't have great demographics in some areas, the dashboard does allow us to run an analysis of, let's say gender, if we're interested particularly in, what are the barriers for women in a particular county. We can run that analysis in the dashboard. One interesting finding, which I did not put in this report, was in regards to bicycle education programs. And we found that there is a crazy demand. Most people don't think they need any training except for bike maintenance. And bicycle maintenance training was, women had a much, much higher demand for bicycle maintenance training than men did. So I thought that was really interesting and something else we should be thinking about. Any other questions?
Right.
Well, thank you so much. If you're able to, did you have another question, Ivan?
No.
Okay.
Just thank you.
I
If
had
you're
one more question
able
and I'm trying to formulate it, if that's okay.
Let's talk it through.
So, I mean, my usual instinct is to look at the interested but concerned group and think of them as the group of people to focus on and see how we could get them more engaged. Do you think the data supports that idea?
I do. And something interesting, so I did my best to go through the data and really question, okay, what factors should we be filtering for? Strong and fearless cyclists, we don't have a ton of them, but they are equal to the interested but concerned. So, we really need to think about, different barriers for these different groups. I will say, generally speaking, when we ran an analysis for interested but concerned, we did generally see consistency with, for example, the reasons people are biking and the barriers. And you can, that even in, a strong and fearless cyclist, they might not have many barriers, but those barriers don't necessarily need to be very different than an interested but concerned cyclist. Excuse me. That said, something interesting, no way, no how cyclists, we didn't have a good response, but of the responses we did get, we found that bike ownership was a really big barrier. So I do think that there's more analysis that can be done here, but we didn't find major swings in the top level findings.
And just to, another thing another point is the groups and agencies and organizations that received this census and sent it viral for a few weeks. These are institutions that appeal to bicyclists. In other words, as Ivan sort of pointed out at the beginning, we didn't disseminate this to public housing organizations or mental health groups. So we didn't really ask people who don't bike why they don't bike. This was I did stretch. I went into land trust organizations and green groups and environmental justice groups, all disseminated this, but we really didn't reach out to organizations whose clients probably don't think much about cycling. Anyways,
All right.
really appreciate this opportunity, Jen, and it's good to see everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us this morning. If you're able to send the presentation, I'd like to be able to share it with
right
you.
now.
Yeah, great.
And
thank you.
I cut and paste the link in the chat.
Yes, if anyone's looking for the dashboard link, it is in the chat, and
And
I'll make sure that.
Reports at the same place.
Thanks, and I'll make sure those links are in our meeting notes. So with that, as you may have noticed on the agenda, there was a note about the change in our meeting schedule. So we will have the special stakeholder input meeting for 378 August 1st, but we are looking to move our meeting schedule to either a quarterly or every other month schedule. I had originally proposed our next meeting be September, but Linda actually made a really good point that a lot of the quarterly meetings here at the Transportation Council are kind of on that same schedule. So if you're in the planner forum and or policy board, those all meet in September and December, all on a quarterly basis. So we may shift the meeting to a different month, but we are going to change our meeting schedule. So please look for save the dates or an email from me with that new schedule. With that, is there anyone here or online who has a major update or a bit of information that they would like to share?
Yeah, I'm Art Clayman. I'm the president of Cycle Schenectady, Bike Advocacy Group in Schenectady, and I'm also the vice president for the Electric City Bike Rescue. So just an update on Cycle Schenectady with a CDTC mini grant. We've been holding a series of bike rodeos, the first of which was in May in Niskayuna. We have another one upcoming in July in Rotterdam, and the third one in the city of Schenectady in the Mount Pleasant section. Tom was the LCI trainer for that first rodeo in Niskayuna, which was successful. And we also learned some things that will enable us to do a better job the second time around. One thing is we limited attendance, and I don't think we'll do that this time. I think the more the merrier, and in terms of training and having fun and handing out helmets and things like that. So we've got more of those on tap. Also, at our last board meeting, we were talking about, our tabling efforts to step up our game there. And we want to have kind of visuals to help people really see what a good complete streets policy is and a bike-friendly community. And I'd be eager to accept help from anybody who has ideas there. We've got access to a printer that will churn out big documents, so we want to have more visuals. We did produce a brochure that we could hand out giving the city of Schenectady credit for the small number of things they've already done, kind of to entice them to do more and encourage them to do more. We're also starting regular Monday night rides. In the past, scheduled rides and with themes and periodic rides. And I think the best thing is just to have a regular ride every other week and at a designated spot and time and see how many people show up to those. In regard to Paul and Dan's census and the mental health and wellness findings, the Bike Rescue participated in Martin Harding Mazzetti's, I think it was their first ever community day this past Saturday, and CDP HP representatives were there, so I wandered over and talked to them about perhaps doing something more in the health realm and getting help from them and participating in events that they are going to schedule or already have. So she made some online introductions to people like Hometown Health in Schenectady, and there's a Schenectady Healthy Community. So we're on that.
That's
and
great.
While this was going on, I got a couple of emails from people there eager to work with us and see what we've got. So particularly, repair clinics and things like that. And that's what we're working on now.
You got to get some doctors to write scripts to join.
Yeah, they already they did that in they did that for real in Schenectady. I was just talking to my wife about it, and picking up on that. And also, I'd like to recommend a book that I'm in the process of reading. It's called Paved Paradise.
It's a good book.
And it talks about how parking drives everything in this country. Land use planning and transportation, and housing makes housing unaffordable. You can't build affordable housing because you're spending so much on parking. So it's called Paved Paradise, and the author is Henry Gabar, Gabar. That's it for me.
Thanks, Art. There's been some interviews with Henry Gabar on NPR, if you're interested in listening.
Okay.
Yeah. James?
Art, where is the best place to keep tabs on all this great stuff that you have going on?
I'm working on a newsletter, so I'll get it right out within the next week. I'll get it to you, James.
Okay, great. Can't wait. I just wanted to give a brief update from Capitol Streets. I think the last time I was on one of these calls, we were still more of an idea than an organization. And so just to, let everybody know who we are, we're a regional advocacy organization focused on active transportation. And we have a network of partners throughout the region. So Albany Bike Coalition and Cycle Schenectady are some of our partners, and we've got a full board, and we've got our New York State status, and we're patiently waiting on our 501c3 status. So we have a couple of events coming up besides Bike to Work Day. We're hosting a meeting in Troy to begin the conversation about putting mountain bike trails into Prospect Park. We're about to announce an event with Walkable Albany focused on walkability in downtown Albany. I believe the date for that will be July 18th. So all this stuff will be on our website. I'll share a link in the chat. And we also just announced our annual fundraiser coming up in September. We're going to have a gravel bike ride in Pittstown over near the Tom Hannock Reservoir. So we're really excited about that as well. So yeah, keep an eye out, sign up for our newsletter, just like Art's.
Thanks, James.
Hey, Jen.
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just wanted to let folks know, I just put a posting on NYBC's website for an assistant director of bicycle safety education. Still looking to build a organization that can sustain bicycle safety education for the foreseeable future. So yeah, that's out there. I actually need to make a little change to it. I think we would prefer to have someone at this time anyway from the capital region. Part of the job will be kind of a physical one in terms of grabbing materials and getting them in the mail, and we have a storage area for that. So anyway, that's out there, FYI.
Thanks, Tom. Ed?
Thanks. ABC is actually taking the month off for June, so we're not going to be having a June meeting. We'll be announcing some rides for later in the summer. But the question I actually, one of the questions I had for people out there is one of the bills I've been following for Albany is the speed camera in school zone bill, and I haven't seen anything in the news about it. It looks like it passed the Assembly and passed the Senate and was returned to the Assembly. And does anybody have any clear picture of where that stands?
Do you have a bill number?
Yeah, I mean the bill numbers, because I did the bill search, but I'm just looking at the bill results, and sometimes they're a little slow about getting things done. The Assembly bill is A07043, and the Senate bill is S06802. The last thing I see is on 6/8, passed the Senate, returned to the Assembly. It passed the Assembly on like 6/6. I don't know if maybe there was an amendment so that they didn't match, and that's why it went back to the Assembly. But if I'm just checking to see if anybody else had heard any other news about it.
I'll check in with some folks. Ed.
All right, thank you.
So I don't think they're moving much this year.
I think they're pretty much done.
Ed, I don't know if you were going to say anything else about statewide legislation, but you know, for everybody else, you're not paying attention to it, which is tedious work. The sessions are sort of wrapped up. The Assembly's apparently going to return back. We've been following, I think it's 6 bills in a Safe Streets package. And Ed and I have been doing some work on that. So fingers crossed that Samuel's Law, it's a New York City specific bill, will get passed, but allowing them to maintain their own speed limits. Yeah, it's a long and challenging legislative session where we're been pushing for things like the Idaho Stop Bill, allowing cyclists to treat traffic controls as 1 grade below, so they could yield at a stop sign and treat a stoplight as a stop sign. And the 3-foot passing bill, which we've been pushing for a very long time here in New York State, is still being blocked by the transportation chair. So yeah, we're looking, I know that Capitol Streets and I'm sure ABC, we're looking forward to developing some clearer priorities for that will impact our region in the next legislative session in 2024. So if anyone is interested in getting more involved in that work, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure you can reach out to Ed. I don't want to volunteer you for more stuff, but I know you're passionate and very active.
It just to add that it looks like the Idaho Stop Bill and Sammy's bill, which is the New York City related speed bill, they both passed one of the houses, but not the other. So it looks like maybe something will happen if the legislature returns, just to keep an eye out.
For the next year.
All right. So it looks like no more updates. So does anyone here have any updates? No. Okay. All right. So thank you. We will have the notes from today's meeting out to everyone as soon as we can. And I'll have a save the date for the 378 stakeholder input meeting, and we'll go from there. So thank you. And if I don't see you, have a great summer.